I'm Heather Schaefer, and this is a virtual workshop on pre-writing strategies for diverse learners. Pre-writing is the first stage in the 5-step writing process. After pre-writing, students move on to drafting, revising, editing, and finally publishing. For this workshop, we're just going to focus on the pre-writing stage. Pre-writing is the stage in which you discover, explore, and organize your thoughts on a particular subject or prompt. The most commonly used pre-writing activities, as seen on the University of Kansas Writing Center website, as well as other major organization websites, are brainstorming, where students are simply listing words and phrases related to the subject; free writing, where students are putting their thoughts into more sentence format, however the sentences still do not need to be written in a logical order, nor do the students need to worry about using proper grammar or spelling; cluster mapping, or the use of basic graphic organizers such as the beginning, middle, end organizer; and the use of journalistic questions, who, what, when, where, why, and how, to generate a story. Right now, I'd like for you to pause the video to discuss what pre-writing activities you have your students do in your classroom. Now that you've discussed the pre-writing activities that you're currently using, I'd like to give you some tips and introduce you to some activities that may be more beneficial to your students. The pre-writing activities that are most commonly used today in the classroom privilege students who prefer to learn through the reading and writing. Lisa Leopold discusses in her article how many students do not fall under this category and are therefore given less of a chance to succeed. While the writing process does need to end with a published written piece, the pre-writing stage can be modified to appeal to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners without abandoning the principles of the writing process. Incorporating activities that match the students' preferred learning styles will most likely lead to higher student achievement. For this workshop, we're going to focus on auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learners. Auditory learners are students who prefer to process information orally, and they do well with activities that involve speaking and listening. Visual learners prefer to learn through seeing things. They do well with activities that involve graphs, charts, pictures, and text. Kinesthetic learners prefer to learn through activities that require physical movement or the use of manipulatives. Right now, I'd like for you to pause your video to discuss your preferred learning style. If you are unsure of your learning style, fill out the self-assessment questionnaire from Walling's book on pages 13 through 17, or another assessment from the internet. Now that you've determined your own learning style, I'd like to show you some activities that you can use with students that share your learning style, or for students that use one of the other learning styles. Visual learners are those who prefer to learn using pictures, graphs, and other visual aids. Storyboarding is a great pre-writing strategy for these visual learners as it combines drawing with writing. Watch this video from Sylvia Rosenthal Tassiano's blog to learn more.
Because he used to do all these really quick sketches to give him ideas of how to do things. So right now we're going to see some of the stuff that
Suzanne Harrington also discusses storyboarding in her article. From her experiences, she's learned to have students draw the beginning and ending portions first, and then have them fill the space in between. Prior to using this strategy, her students' fiction writing seemed to have no real direction. They didn't seem to know when to end, and would usually be left with a story that was not very believable, with an ending that promised a new chapter or sequel where everything would be explained. Having the students plan the beginning and ending first resulted in more believable and organized stories. Another great activity to use with visual learners is the TIC TAC TOE graphic organizer, which is presented by Charlotte Mundy and Julianne Coleman from Alabama State University. Often graphic organizers are good for generating ideas, but are not very easily translated into paragraphs. This three-step writing process is particular for writing 5-paragraph essays. The strategy works best when writing a specific prompt. The prompt used in the example is write an essay persuading the school board members to increase recess time. Before starting the use of the graphic organizer, Mundy and Coleman have their students discuss big ideas that can be used, and then they choose 3 and write them in the big idea boxes under the TIC category. In the TAC category, students are writing 3 supporting details for every 1 big idea. In the TOE area, students think of a hot word that can be used when they are writing each supporting detail. A hot word, according to Coleman and Mundy, is a word used that makes students' writing clearer and more exciting to readers. The example they give is replacing the word big with the word humongous. When students are using this graphic organizers to write their 5-paragraph essay, they'll first look at the 3 TIC areas to come up with the introduction. Then they'll look across the rows to the tic-tac-toe that go along with each big idea to write the 3 body paragraphs. They then look back at just the TIC column to do their conclusion. This strategy could be completed by all students independently after it has been modeled. Although this strategy may be most beneficial to visual learners, you may wish to teach the process to all students for use on timed writing assessments such as the state exams. Since the completed organizer is so easily and quickly translated into paragraphs, it will reduce the amount of time wasted transferring their ideas into well-thought-out paragraphs. Having the hot word section will also ensure that students are aware of the word choices they are making, which will most likely result in a more interesting piece. The next group of activities are for auditory learners, who prefer to process information orally and do well with activities that involve speaking and listening. If you're having students write an argument or persuasive piece, you can have them first participate in a debate and then have them go back to their seats and write their ideas that they've just discussed. You can also have students dictate their writing to yourself or to a peer as the peer writes it down. You could have students simply participate in peer discussions or record themselves thinking aloud. Students may also record podcasts of themselves speaking to a peer or thinking aloud. Some elementary teachers feel that podcasting may be too advanced for the elementary students. However, you can see in this video that even first grade students have the ability to create podcasts.
Welcome to First Aid, where we are making our first podcast. We've been making podcasts, and I really like making podcasts with my friends because they're really good. Podcasts are very helpful for making you smart. Hi, this is me, host Dominic, with my guest Hayden. The podcast is like a radio show you can listen to on the internet. We've been making podcasts about reading. My job was to answer questions. Well, all you have to do is go to the GarageBand and type in your name. There's a red button with a black dot in the middle, and when you want to record, you press that. And then if you want to stop, you press the space bar. And if you want to play to listen to it, you press the space bar too. We were working as a team, and we did a podcast about recess. Podcasts are great because they teach you something. We read this book, and then we made a podcast about it. We talked about what happened to the caterpillar and why we like Eric Carle. Why do you really like Eric Carle? Because he does pretty pictures and mixed colors together. I like listening to my friend's podcast because I learned all about the book they were talking about. and a little about the author who wrote it. We're putting the music onto a podcast, so then when we put it to a stuff, we can hear music. You click on add, then you click on the jingle right there, then you click it on right there on again. Then you click on what song you like, then you just click on whatever one, and then you just take and drag it to where you want on here. After we make a podcast, our teacher puts it on our classroom website. Everybody in the world can listen to a podcast, and they can. Everybody that has internet can listen to it. Podcasts are fun and easy, but they also teach you something. Doing a podcast can make you read better and speak clearly. You could download a podcast onto the iPod right here. So easy. It is true that first graders can actually do podcasts. I'll prove it. If it's their first time, it's going to be a little hard, but once they do it for a while, it's going to be perfect. Look at that one. We hope you enjoyed learning about our first podcast. I have a feeling it's not going to be our last. Goodbye!
As the student said, podcasts can be listened to over and over again through the internet or on an iPod. So students can refer to the podcast as they go through the drafting process, which would be a great tool for auditory learners. The next set of activities are pre-writing activities for kinesthetic learners. These are the students who prefer to learn by playing with manipulatives or using physical movement. A movable storyboard is a great idea for kinesthetic learners as it allows them to rearrange the cards in order to come up with a good story. Here's an example.
The storyboard gives you so many options for your tactile learner. It's easy to create. It's a lot of fun. You can add ideas, move them around, delete them.
So as you can see, they're putting different events or setting or characters on the board and rearranging them until they find a proper format. Another great idea for kinesthetic learners is role-playing. You can give students props or simply put a necklace around their neck giving them a role and have them act out a story before they go down and write it. Right now, I'd like for you to pause the video to try one of the pre-writing activities that matches your preferred learning style. Then, discuss what you thought about the activity. Did you find it easier to think of a story using this strategy? Is this something you would use with your students? If so, would you need to modify the activity in any way? I hope you enjoyed the activity. Now that we've completed this workshop, I'm going to give you an assignment. I'd like you to read Teaching Writing to Visual, Auditory, and Kinesthetic Learners by Donovan R. And then, if you have not already determined the learning styles of your students, use the self-assessment questionnaire in the book to do so. Then, create a lesson similar to Sample Lesson 2.1 on page 28 to 29 and implement it with your students. Keep notes on your experience creating and implementing the lesson, including any changes you saw in your students' quality of and attitude towards writing, and share with your colleagues at a future meeting. If you'd like to learn more information about the writing process or different activities to use with your students, you can visit one of these websites. Here's the list of resources that I use in creating this workshop. I hope you enjoyed the workshop and that you'll use some of these activities with your students.